The rope bit into Hannah Sterling's wrists as Sheriff Dawson dragged her through the dusty main street of Val Verde, Texas, and she knew with absolute certainty that her life was about to end at the age of 22. The September sun beat down mercilessly on her bare head, her dark blonde hair tangled and wild as the townspeople gathered to watch the spectacle of a horse thief being brought to justice. It was 1878, and in this part of Texas, horse thieves were hanged without much ceremony, and no one would shed a tear for a woman who had allegedly stolen from the most powerful man in 3 counties. Please, you have to listen to me, Hannah gasped, stumbling over her own feet as the sheriff pulled her along. That mare is mine. I raised her from a foal. Her name is Sage, and she knows me. Just let me prove it. Sheriff Dawson, a portly man with a thick mustache and eyes that showed no sympathy, spat into the dirt. Save your breath for the judge, girl. Mr. Harrington says you stole his prized mare right out of his stable last night, and seeing as how you were found, riding her not 10 miles from his ranch this morning, I would say the evidence is pretty clear. The crowd parted as they approached the courthouse, a weathered building that had seen more than its share of frontier justice. Hannah's heart hammered against her ribs, panic threatening to overwhelm her. She had come to Val Verde only 3 months ago, after her father had died from consumption back in Missouri. She had sold everything they owned except for Sage, the beautiful dapple gray mare that her father had bred himself, and made the long journey west, hoping to start fresh. She had found work at the general store, kept to herself, and tried to build a quiet life. Now that life was unraveling, because Charles Harrington, the wealthy rancher who owned half the county, had decided that her horse was his. Inside the courthouse, the air was stifling and thick with the smell of unwashed bodies and tobacco smoke. Judge Whitmore sat behind a scarred wooden desk, his face weathered like old leather, his expression already bored with the proceedings before they even began. Harrington stood to one side, dressed in an expensive suit that looked absurdly out of place in the rustic courtroom. He was a tall man in his 50s with iron gray hair and cold blue eyes that assessed Hannah with the same detachment he might show a stray dog. Your Honor, Harrington said, his voice smooth and cultured, I appreciate your swift action in this matter. The mare in question is worth considerable money, part of a breeding line I have been developing for years. This woman somehow gained access to my property and made off with her during the night. My men tracked her down this morning. Hannah opened her mouth to protest, but Judge Whitmore held up a hand. You will get your chance to speak, miss. Mr. Harrington, do you have proof of ownership? I do, Your Honor. Harrington produced a paper from his jacket. Bill of sale from a breeder in Kansas, dated 2 years ago. The mare matches the description exactly. Dapple gray, white star on her forehead, approximately 15 hands high, distinctive dark marking on her left foreleg. Hannah's stomach dropped. The description was accurate down to the last detail, but how could Harrington have a bill of sale for a horse that had never been his? Unless he had forged it, which seemed impossible to prove in a courtroom where his word carried the weight of gold and hers carried nothing at all. Miss Sterling, the judge said, turning his attention to her. What do you have to say for yourself? Your Honor, that horse is mine, Hannah said, trying to keep her voice steady despite the fear coursing through her. My father bred her himself 4 years ago back in Missouri. Her mother was a mare called Silver, and her father was a stallion named Ghost. I have raised Sage since she was born. She knows me. She responds to my voice. If you would just let me show you. Do you have any papers? The judge interrupted. Any documentation of ownership? Hannah felt tears prick at her eyes. No, sir. My father never got formal papers drawn up. We were simple farmers. We did not have money for such things. But I can prove she is mine. There is a scar on her right hip where she got cut on barbed wire when she was a yearling. She has a habit of pawing the ground 3 times before she drinks water. She will come to me when I call her, even from a distance. Harrington laughed, the sound cold and dismissive. Your Honor, any competent horse thief would spend time learning the animal's habits to make such claims. And as for a scar, many horses have scars. This is a waste of the court's time. I have documentation. She has stories. The law is clear. Judge Whitmore stroked his beard thoughtfully, and Hannah could see the decision forming in his eyes. She was nobody, a woman alone with no family, no money, no influence. Harrington was power personified. The outcome had been decided before she ever set foot in this courtroom. I am inclined to agree with Mr. Harrington, the judge began, and Hannah felt the floor drop out from under her. Wait. The voice came from the back of the courtroom, deep and firm, cutting through the murmur of the crowd. Everyone turned to look. A man stood in the doorway, tall and lean with sun-darkened skin and eyes the color of whiskey. He wore the practical clothes of a working cowboy, dusty from the trail, with a worn hat in his hands. Hannah had never seen him before, but something in his face, in the set of his jaw, suggested a man who did not speak unless he had something important to say. "Who are you?" Judge Whitmore demanded. "Name is Lucas Shepard," the man said, stepping forward with an easy, confident stride. "I am a horse trainer, work for the Rockingham Ranch about 30 miles north of here. I happened to be in town on business, heard the commotion, and thought I might be able to help settle this matter." Harrington's eyes narrowed. "This does not concern you, Shepard. This is between me, the thief, and the law." Lucas turned his gaze to Harrington, and Hannah saw something flicker in those amber eyes, something sharp and assessing. "Well, sir, I think it does concern me, seeing as how I know something about horses and about proving ownership. Your Honor, if I may, I would like to propose a simple test." The judge leaned back in his chair, curiosity evident on his weathered face. "What kind of test?" "The mare is currently in the stable behind the sheriff's office, correct?" Lucas asked. When the sheriff nodded, Lucas continued. "Then let both parties go to the stable. Keep them separated. Have Miss Sterling call the horse without approaching the stall. If the horse truly knows her as she claims, the animal will respond in a way that cannot be faked. Horses know their people, Your Honor. It is in their nature." "This is absurd," Harrington protested. "I have legal documentation. This cowboy is wasting everyone's time." "Are you afraid the test will prove you wrong?" Lucas asked, his tone mild but his eyes challenging. The crowd muttered with interest. Judge Whitmore rubbed his chin, clearly intrigued by the drama unfolding before him. "I see no harm in it. If Mr. Harrington's claim is legitimate, the test will only confirm it. Sheriff, take them both to the stable. Keep them apart as Mr. Shepard suggested. Let the woman call the horse first." Harrington's face flushed with anger, but he could hardly refuse without looking guilty. "Fine, let us get this farce over with." The entire courtroom emptied into the street, the townspeople eager for entertainment. Hannah's heart raced as Sheriff Dawson led her around to the back of his office, where a small stable stood in the shade of a live oak tree. She could hear Sage moving in one of the stalls, the familiar sound of hooves shifting on straw, and her heart ached with the need to see her horse, to touch her, to know she was all right. Lucas Shepard positioned himself near the stable door, and when Hannah glanced at him, he gave her the smallest nod, as if to say he believed her. She did not understand why this stranger had intervened, but gratitude flooded through her nonetheless. "All right, miss," Judge Whitmore said. "Call your horse, but do not approach the stall. Stay right where you are." Hannah took a deep breath, steadying herself. She thought of all the mornings she had gone out to the small paddock behind their farmhouse in Missouri, calling Sage in for her breakfast. She thought of the way the mare would whinny in response, trotting over with her ears pricked forward, always happy to see Hannah. She thought of the bond they had built over 4 years, a connection that went deeper than ownership papers or bills of sale. "Sage," Hannah called, her voice clear and strong despite the trembling in her hands. "Sage girl, it is me. Come here, sweetheart." For a moment, nothing happened. The crowd held its collective breath. Then, from inside the stable, came an answering whinny, high-pitched and urgent. The sound of hooves thudding against wood followed, and Sage's beautiful gray head appeared over the stall door, ears pricked forward, nostrils flaring as she searched for Hannah. "Sage!" Hannah called again, and the mare whinnied louder, pawing at the stall door with such force that the wood shuddered. "That does not prove anything," Harrington snapped. "The horse would respond to anyone calling it. Animals are not that particular." Lucas stepped forward. "Then let Mr. Harrington try. Use the same name, the same tone. Let us see if the horse responds the same way." Harrington glared at him but moved to where Hannah had been standing. "Sage," he called, his voice dripping with false sweetness. "Come here, Sage." The mare's ears flattened against her skull. She tossed her head and backed away from the stall door, disappearing into the shadows. The message was clear. She wanted nothing to do with the man calling her. The crowd murmured with interest. Lucas caught Hannah's eye, and there was something in his expression, a glint of satisfaction, that made her think he had expected exactly this outcome. "Your Honor," Lucas said, "with your permission, I would like to take this one step further. Let Miss Sterling approach the horse. Let us see how the animal truly reacts to her." Judge Whitmore nodded slowly. "Go ahead, miss, but if you make any sudden moves, the sheriff will stop you." Hannah walked toward the stable on shaking legs, hardly daring to believe this might work. She reached the stall door and looked inside. Sage stood in the back corner, her eyes wide, body tense. The mare had been frightened, confused by the strange men who had taken her, by the unfamiliar surroundings. "Hey, sweet girl," Hannah said softly, reaching out her hand. "It is all right. I am here now." Sage's ears pricked forward. She took one tentative step, then another. Then, with a loud whinny that sounded almost like relief, the mare surged forward, pressing her soft muzzle into Hannah's outstretched palm. Hannah felt tears spill down her cheeks as she stroked Sage's face, felt the mare nuzzle against her, breathing in her scent. This was more than recognition. This was love, trust, the bond between a horse and the human who had raised her. "Check her right hip," Lucas called out. Miss Sterling mentioned a scar. Sheriff Dawson moved into the stall, and Hannah reluctantly stepped back to let him examine the horse. He ran his hand along Sage's hip and then looked up, his expression troubled. "There is a scar here, all right. Old one, like she said. Looks like barbed wire might have done it." "Many horses have scars," Harrington insisted, but his voice had lost some of its confidence. "Bring a bucket of water," Lucas said. "Let us see if the horse has the habit Miss Sterling described." A stable hand hurried to fetch a bucket, sloshing water over the sides in his haste. He set it down in front of Sage, and everyone watched in tense silence. The mare lowered her head, sniffed at the water, and then, clear as day, pawed the ground 3 times with her right front hoof before dipping her muzzle in to drink. The crowd erupted in conversation. Judge Whitmore's bushy eyebrows rose nearly to his hairline. Even Sheriff Dawson looked impressed, scratching his head as he studied Harrington with new suspicion. "Mr. Harrington," the judge said slowly, "I am beginning to have doubts about your claim. This horse clearly knows Miss Sterling in a way that suggests a long acquaintance. The specific details she provided have all been confirmed. Do you have any explanation for how you came to possess a bill of sale for a horse that appears to belong to someone else?" Harrington's face had gone from flushed to pale, his jaw tight. "This is ridiculous. I purchased that mare in good faith. If there has been some mistake, it is not my fault. But the law is clear. I have documentation, and she does not." "The law is also clear about fraud," Lucas said quietly. "Your Honor, I would wager that if you examine that bill of sale closely, you will find it does not match up with the horse's true age. Miss Sterling says the mare is 4 years old. Mr. Harrington's document claims he bought her 2 years ago. If she was old enough to be sold by a Kansas breeder 2 years ago, she would have to be at least 3 at that time, which would make her at least 5 now. but any experienced horseman can tell you that this mare is no more than 4, judging by her teeth and build." Judge Whitmore gestured impatiently. "Let me see that bill of sale again, Harrington." Reluctantly, Harrington handed over the paper. The judge studied it carefully, his frown deepening. Then he called over a local veterinarian who had been watching from the crowd. "Doc Mason, take a look at this horse's teeth. Tell me how old she is." Doc Mason was a grizzled old man who had been treating animals in Valverde for 30 years. He approached Sage calmly, and with Hannah's murmured encouragement, the mare allowed him to examine her mouth. After a moment, he straightened and looked at the judge. "She's 4 years old, Your Honor. I would stake my reputation on it." The judge's expression hardened. "Mr. Harrington, this document claims you purchased this horse from a breeder 2 years ago, which would make her at least 5 years old now, probably older. Either this is not the same horse or this document is fraudulent. Which is it?" "There must be some mistake in the paperwork," Harrington said quickly. "But that does not change the fact that I paid good money for her. I found this mare on my property just last week, wandering loose. I assumed she was a stray and brought her into my stable. If she belonged to someone else, I had no way of knowing." "That is a lie," Hannah burst out, unable to contain herself any longer. "Sage was never on your property. She was in the livery stable here in town, where I board her. Someone must have taken her from there and brought her to you, or you took her yourself." Lucas stepped forward again, his expression thoughtful. "Your Honor, so, with your permission, I would like to ask Mr. Harrington a question. Sir, you said you have been developing a breeding line. What can you tell me about this mare's lineage? If you truly purchased her from a breeder, you would know about her bloodlines." Harrington hesitated just for a moment, but it was enough. She has good conformation, strong legs, suitable for breeding." "That is not what I asked," Lucas said. "What about her parents? Her bloodline?" "Any reputable breeder would have provided that information with the sale." Harrington's silence was damning. Lucas turned to Hannah. "Miss Sterling, you said you know this mare's parents. Can you describe them?" "Her mother was Silver, a gray mare about 16 hands high with a gentle temperament," Hannah said quickly. "Her father was Ghost, a larger stallion, nearly white, known for his speed and intelligence. Both were from my father's small breeding program. He only had 3 horses, but he cared for them like they were family." Lucas nodded, then addressed the judge. "Your Honor, I think it is clear what happened here. Mr. Harrington either saw this mare around town and decided he wanted her, or someone told him about her. He had a forged bill of sale created, or perhaps he altered an old document from an actual purchase of a different horse. Then he arranged for the mare to be taken from the livery and brought to his ranch, after which he accused Miss Sterling of theft to cover his own crime." "This is outrageous!" Harrington exploded. "I will not stand here and be accused of theft by some drifting cowboy who knows nothing about me or my business. Judge Whitmore, I have supported this town for years. I employ half the men here. Are you really going to take the word of a nobody over mine?" The threat in his words was clear, and Hannah saw Judge Whitmore's expression flicker with uncertainty. Harrington had power, money, influence. Going against him could have consequences for the judge, for the town, for anyone who dared to stand in his way. But Lucas Shepard did not flinch. "Your Honor, the evidence speaks for itself. The horse knows Miss Sterling. She provided details about the animal that proved accurate. The age does not match the supposed bill of sale. Mr. Harrington cannot provide information about the mare's lineage that any legitimate buyer would know. If you rule in his favor despite all this, you are not upholding the law. You are enabling theft." The crowd murmured in agreement. Hannah saw nods among the townspeople, saw the way they looked at Harrington now with suspicion instead of deference. Whatever power he held, it was not absolute, and public opinion carried its own weight. Judge Whitmore straightened in his chair, his jaw set. "Mr. Harrington, I am dismissing your claim. The evidence suggests that this mare belongs to Miss Sterling, and I am ruling in her favor. Furthermore, I am opening an investigation into how this situation came about. If it is determined that fraud was involved, there will be additional charges." Harrington's face contorted with rage. For a moment, Hannah thought he might actually attack someone, but then he seemed to get control of himself. "This is not over," he said, his voice low and dangerous. He shot a venomous look at Lucas. "You have made a powerful enemy today, Shepard. I do not forget those who cross me." "I will sleep just fine tonight," Lucas replied calmly. Harrington stormed out of the stable yard, his expensive boots kicking up dust. The crowd began to disperse, many people coming up to congratulate Hannah or to shake Lucas's hand. Hannah stood there, still trembling, hardly able to believe that it was over, that she was not going to hang, that Sage was truly hers again. Sheriff Dawson approached her with a ring of keys. "Let me get those ropes off you, miss. I apologize for the rough treatment. I was just doing my job, but I should have listened to your side of things more carefully." As the ropes fell away, Hannah rubbed her chafed wrists, wincing at the raw skin. Then she turned to find Lucas Shepard, who stood a little apart from the crowd, watching her with those observant amber eyes. "Thank you," she said, her voice thick with emotion. "I do not know why you helped me, but you saved my life today. I do not know how I can ever repay you." Lucas shook his head. "No repayment necessary, miss. I just hate seeing an injustice, especially when it involves a good horse and an honest person. Harrington has a reputation for getting what he wants, no matter who gets hurt. It was past time someone stood up to him." "But you heard him. He threatened you. He could make things difficult for you." A slight smile tugged at the corner of Lucas's mouth. "I have dealt with men like Harrington before. They think money and power make them untouchable, but they are still bound by the law, same as everyone else. Besides, I do not plan to be in Valverde much longer. I am just passing through on my way to a new job." Hannah felt an unexpected stab of disappointment at those words. She barely knew this man, but he had shown her more kindness and courage in one afternoon than anyone had since her father died. The thought of him riding out of town and out of her life felt wrong somehow. "Where are you headed?" she found herself asking. "Ranch up near San Antonio needs a head trainer. Good position, good pay. I have been working smaller jobs since I left the army last year, but it is time to settle down somewhere." He paused, studying her face. "What about you? You planning to stay in Valverde after all this?" Hannah looked at Sage, who stood calmly in her stall, and thought about the tiny room she rented above the general store, the lonely meals, the struggle to make ends meet. "I do not know," she admitted. "I came here hoping for a fresh start, but maybe this was a sign that I should move on. Harrington may have lost today, but men like him do not give up. He could make my life miserable if I stay." "That would be letting him win," Lucas said. "You have every right to be here, to make a life for yourself. Do not let fear chase you away." His words stirred something in Hannah's chest, a flicker of defiance and determination. He was right. She had already lost so much in her life, her mother to childbirth when Hannah was just a girl, her father to illness, her childhood home. She was tired of running, tired of losing. Maybe it was time to stand and fight for what was hers. "You are right," she said softly. "I am tired of being pushed around. I will stay." Lucas nodded approvingly. "Good. This town could use more people with backbone." He glanced at the sky where the sun was beginning its descent toward the horizon. "I should find a place to stay tonight, planning to head out tomorrow morning." "Wait," Hannah said impulsively. "Please let me at least buy you dinner. It is the least I can do." Lucas hesitated, and for a moment Hannah thought he would refuse. Then he smiled, a real smile that softened his features and made her heart skip unexpectedly. "All right, dinner sounds good." They walked down the main street together, leading Sage back to the livery stable where the embarrassed owner assured Hannah repeatedly that he had no idea how the mare had been taken, that it must have happened during the night when he was asleep. Hannah was too relieved to be angry. She settled Sage into her usual stall, gave her fresh hay and water, and stood for a long moment with her arms around the mare's neck, breathing in the familiar scent of horse and hay and home. Lucas waited patiently, and when Hannah finally emerged, they made their way to the town's only restaurant, a small establishment run by a Mexican family that served the best food in Valverde. The proprietress, Senora Alvarez, greeted them warmly and showed them to a table near the window. Over plates of enchiladas and beans, Hannah found herself telling Lucas things she had not told anyone else since coming to town. She talked about her father, about growing up on a small farm in Missouri, about the quiet life they had led. She talked about watching her father waste away from consumption, about the helpless feeling of knowing he was dying and being unable to stop it. She talked about the decision to come west, to try to build something new. Lucas listened attentively, asking questions here and there, his expression thoughtful. When she finally ran out of words, he sat back and regarded her with what looked like respect. "You have been through a lot," he said, "but you are still here, still fighting. That takes strength." "I do not feel very strong," Hannah admitted. "Most days I feel like I am barely holding things together." "Strength is not about never being afraid or never struggling," Lucas said. "It is about pushing through anyway. You are doing that." They talked late into the evening, and Hannah learned about Lucas's life as well. He had grown up on a ranch in New Mexico, the youngest of 5 brothers. He had learned about horses from his father, who had been one of the best trainers in the territory. When the army needed scouts and horsemen, Lucas had enlisted, serving for 4 years before mustering out. Now he was making his way as a free man, going where the work took him, never staying in one place too long. "Do not you ever want to settle down?" Hannah asked. "Have a place of your own?" "Someday," Lucas said, "but I have not found the right place yet. Or maybe I have not found the right reason to stop moving." Something in the way he looked at her when he said that made Hannah's breath catch. She barely knew this man, had met him only hours ago, but there was a connection between them that she could not deny. He had seen her at her most vulnerable, had believed in her when no one else did, had risked making an enemy of a powerful man to help her. And beyond that, she simply liked being around him. He made her feel safe, seen, valued. When they finally left the restaurant, the streets of Valverde were quiet, most businesses closed for the night. Lucas walked Hannah back to the general store, and they stood outside in the warm evening air, neither quite ready to say goodbye. "Thank you again," Hannah said, "for everything." "You already thanked me," Lucas replied. "Several times. It bears repeating." She hesitated, then added, "I hope your new job works out well for you." "Thank you. I hope things get easier for you here." They stood there for another moment, the silence stretching between them, heavy with things unsaid. Then Lucas tipped his hat. "Good night, Hannah." "Good night, Lucas." She watched him walk away, his tall figure gradually disappearing into the darkness. Then she climbed the stairs to her small room, but she could not sleep. She kept thinking about Lucas Shepard, about the quiet strength in him, about the way he had looked at her. She told herself she was being foolish, that he was leaving town in the morning and she would probably never see him again. But her heart did not seem to care about logic. The next morning, Hannah woke early and went to check on Sage. The mare was fine, munching contentedly on hay, and Hannah spent some time brushing her coat until it shone. She was just finishing up when she heard footsteps behind her. "She is a beautiful horse." Hannah spun around to find Lucas standing in the stable doorway, his saddlebag slung over his shoulder, ready to leave. Her heart leaped at the sight of him. "I thought you would be gone by now," she said. "I am heading out shortly. Just wanted to check on you first, make sure there were no problems overnight." "No problems. Everything is quiet." Lucas nodded, but he did not move to leave. Instead, he stepped closer, his eyes searching her face. "Hannah, I have been thinking about what you said last night, about not feeling strong. I just want you to know that you impressed me yesterday. The way you stood up for yourself, the way you did not back down even when things looked bad, that took courage. Hannah felt warmth spread through her chest. I had help, but you were willing to fight for what was yours. A lot of people would have just given up. He paused, seeming to struggle with something. Listen, I know I said I was taking that job in San Antonio, but the truth is I have not signed anything yet. It is just an offer, and I was thinking maybe I should stick around Valverde for a while. Make sure Harrington does not try anything else. Hannah's heart began to race. You would do that? But what about your job? There will be other jobs, Lucas said. But something tells me I should be here right now, if that is all right with you. Hannah felt a smile spreading across her face, impossible to contain. It is more than all right with me. It is wonderful. The relief in Lucas's expression was unmistakable. Good, then I guess I will need to find a place to stay. The boarding house on 3rd Street has rooms, Hannah said. Mrs. Henderson runs it. She is kind and the rates are reasonable. I will check it out. Lucas shifted his weight, looking uncharacteristically uncertain. Maybe we could have dinner again tonight, if you are not too busy. I would like that very much. They smiled at each other, and Hannah felt something shift in the air between them, a possibility opening up that had not existed before. Lucas Shepard was staying. He was staying because of her, to make sure she was safe, and maybe for other reasons that neither of them was quite ready to name yet. Over the following days, Lucas became a fixture in Hannah's life. He found work at the livery stable, helping with the horses, and his skill quickly earned him respect among the townspeople. He and Hannah fell into an easy routine, meeting for meals, taking walks together in the evenings, talking about everything and nothing. Lucas had a dry sense of humor that surprised Hannah, making her laugh in ways she had not laughed since her father died. And Hannah found herself opening up to him more and more, sharing her hopes and fears and dreams for the future. True to Lucas's warning, Charles Harrington did not give up easily. He spread rumors around town about Hannah, suggesting she had somehow tricked the judge, that she was a charlatan and a troublemaker. Some people believed him, but more did not, especially after Lucas quietly started sharing his own observations about Harrington's business practices. It turned out that several other people in town had been cheated or threatened by the wealthy rancher over the years, but no one had dared to speak up before. Now, with Lucas setting an example of standing up to Harrington, others began to find their courage as well. A month after the trial, Judge Whitmore announced that his investigation had turned up evidence of fraud. The bill of sale Harrington had presented had been altered from a different transaction. The dates and description changed to match Sage. The original document had been for a different horse entirely, one that Harrington actually had purchased years earlier. Faced with potential criminal charges, Harrington left Valverde in disgrace, selling his ranch to a consortium of local families and moving east. His departure was quiet and quick, and the town breathed a collective sigh of relief to be free of his influence. With Harrington gone, Hannah began to truly feel at home in Valverde. She continued working at the general store, but she also started training horses on the side, using the skills her father had taught her. Lucas helped her, and together they built a reputation for turning difficult horses into reliable mounts. People came from surrounding ranches to hire them, and slowly but surely, Hannah began to save money, dreaming of the day she might have a small place of her own. Through it all, her relationship with Lucas deepened. They were partners in work, friends in leisure, and gradually, inevitably, something more. Hannah found herself thinking about him constantly, noticing the way his eyes crinkled when he smiled, the way his voice softened when he spoke to her, the way her heart raced when he was near. She thought she was being subtle about her feelings, but one evening, as they sat on the steps outside the general store, watching the sunset, Lucas took her hand in his. "Hannah," he said quietly, "I need to tell you something." Her heart hammered. "What is it?" "When I first came to Valverde, I was just passing through. I had no intention of staying, but then I met you and everything changed. He turned to look at her, his amber eyes intense. I think I started falling for you that first day when I saw how brave you were, how you refused to give up even when everything seemed lost. And every day since then, I have fallen a little more. I know we have not known each other that long, but I cannot imagine my life without you in it now. Hannah's breath caught. Lucas, I feel the same way. I have been afraid to say anything, afraid that maybe you still saw this as temporary, that you would leave someday. I am not going anywhere, Lucas said firmly. Not unless you want me to. I do not want you to. I want you to stay. I want. She trailed off, suddenly shy. What do you want, Hannah? She looked into his eyes and found the courage to speak her heart. I want a life with you, a future. I want to build something together, something that is ours. Lucas smiled, and it transformed his whole face. Then gently he cupped her cheek with his free hand and leaned in to kiss her. It was soft and sweet and filled with promise, and when they pulled apart, Hannah felt like her heart might burst from happiness. Then that is what we will do, Lucas said. We will build a life together. They were married 3 months later, in a simple ceremony at the small church in Valverde. Senora Alvarez helped Hannah make a dress from cream-colored fabric, and Lucas wore his best suit, borrowed from the owner of the livery stable. The whole town turned out to celebrate, happy to see two people who had been through so much fine joy together. Hannah stood beside Lucas and spoke her vows with a full heart, promising to love him in good times and bad, in sickness and health, for all the days of her life. When Lucas kissed her as her husband for the first time, she knew she had finally found the home she had been searching for, not in a place, but in a person. They rented a small house on the edge of town, with a little barn where they could keep Sage and take in other horses for training. Lucas proved to be as skilled at building a business as he was at training horses, and within a year, Shepard Horse Training had become one of the most respected operations in the region. They worked side by side every day, Hannah's intuition and gentle touch complementing Lucas's strength and expertise. Together, they could handle horses that others had given up on, finding ways to reach even the most troubled animals. Life was not always easy. There were lean months when work was scarce, and there were challenges that tested them. But through it all, they had each other. Hannah learned that Lucas had nightmares sometimes from his time in the army, waking up in the middle of the night with his heart racing, and she learned to hold him and talk him through it until he calmed. Lucas learned that Hannah still grieved for her father, that some days the loss hit her hard, and he learned to give her space to feel it while making sure she knew she was not alone. They learned each other's rhythms, the way married people do. Hannah learned that Lucas liked his coffee strong and black, that he hummed while he worked on the horses, that he had a habit of running his hand through his hair when he was thinking hard about something. Lucas learned that Hannah was not a morning person, that she had a sweet tooth she tried to hide, that she talked to the horses like they were people, and somehow they seemed to understand. As the months turned into years, their love only grew stronger. They built a good life in Valverde, becoming respected members of the community. Hannah started a small garden behind their house, growing vegetables and herbs. Lucas added on to the barn, creating more stalls so they could take on more training work. They saved their money carefully, talking about the future, about the possibility of buying their own land someday, and starting a real ranch. On their second anniversary, Lucas surprised Hannah by taking her to look at a piece of property about 5 miles outside of town. It was 100 acres of good grazing land with a creek running through it and a view of the distant hills. There was an old farmhouse on it that needed work, but the bones were solid. "What do you think?" Lucas asked, watching Hannah's face as she took it all in. "I think it is beautiful," Hannah said, her voice full of wonder. "But Lucas, can we afford this?" "I have been talking to the bank. We have enough saved for a down payment, and with the business doing as well as it is, we can manage the mortgage. It would be tight for a while, but we could do it, if you want to. Hannah turned to him, tears glistening in her eyes. I want to. I want this to be ours. I want to build something here that will last. They purchased the property, and for the next year, they poured all their energy into fixing up the house and establishing the ranch. They worked from dawn until dusk, painting and repairing, mending fences and clearing land. Friends from town came out to help on weekends, and slowly but surely their dream took shape. They moved their horse training operation to the new ranch, building a proper stable and training paddock. They bought a few head of cattle to start a herd, and Lucas built a chicken coop so Hannah could have fresh eggs. It was hard work, exhausting at times, but they had never been happier. At night, they would collapse into bed in their new home, too tired to do anything but hold each other and talk about what they wanted to accomplish next. Those conversations, quiet and intimate in the darkness, were some of Hannah's favorite moments. She loved hearing Lucas's plans and dreams, loved sharing her own, loved the way they could build something together with just their words and their will. On a warm summer evening in 1881, Hannah realized she was pregnant. She had suspected for a few weeks, but had not been certain until she consulted with Doc Mason, who confirmed it with a knowing smile. She waited until that evening, when she and Lucas were sitting on the porch watching the sunset, to tell him. "Lucas, I have something to tell you," she said, trying to keep her voice casual, even though her heart was racing. "What is it?" He looked at her, concern flickering across his face. "Is everything all right?" "Everything is perfect. I am going to have a baby." For a moment, Lucas just stared at her, his expression unreadable. Then a smile broke across his face like the sun emerging from behind clouds. "A baby? We are going to have a baby?" "In the spring, Doc Mason says." Lucas pulled her into his arms, holding her tight. "Hannah, this is the best news I could have imagined. I cannot believe it. We are going to be parents." She laughed, feeling his joy infuse her own. "I know. It is terrifying and wonderful all at once." "You are going to be an amazing mother," Lucas said, pulling back to look at her face. "Our child is so lucky to have you." "And you," Hannah said. "You're going to be a wonderful father." The months of Hannah's pregnancy passed in a blur of preparation and anticipation. Lucas became almost comically protective, insisting that Hannah take it easy, even though she felt perfectly fine, and continued working with the horses well into her 7th month. He built a cradle with his own hands, carving their initials into the headboard along with the date. Hannah sewed baby clothes and blankets, her hands busy while her mind wandered to thoughts of what their child would be like. They talked endlessly about names, never quite settling on anything until one night when Lucas suggested they wait until they met the baby. "We will know the right name when we see them," he said. And Hannah agreed. Winter gave way to spring, and as the wild flowers began to bloom across their land, Hannah went into labor. It was a long, difficult process that lasted through the night and into the next morning. Lucas stayed by her side the whole time, holding her hand, wiping her forehead, whispering encouragement. Doc Mason and Senora Alvarez attended her, and finally, as the sun climbed higher in the sky, Hannah gave birth to a healthy baby boy. When Doc Mason placed the infant in her arms, Hannah felt her heart expand in a way she had not known was possible. The baby had dark hair and Lucas's strong features, and when he opened his eyes, they were a deep, unfocused blue. "Hello, little one," Hannah whispered, tears streaming down her face. "We have been waiting for you." Lucas sat on the bed beside her, his arm around her shoulders, staring down at their son with an expression of absolute wonder. "He is perfect," he said, his voice choked with emotion. "Hannah, he is perfect." "What should we name him?" Hannah asked. Lucas thought for a moment, then said, "What about Henry? It was my grandfather's name. He was a good man, the one who taught me to respect horses and to always keep my word." "Henry Shepard," Hannah said, testing the name. "I love it." Their son Henry became the center of their world. Hannah discovered that she loved being a mother almost as much as she loved working with horses. She delighted in every small milestone, every smile, every new sound Henry made. Lucas was a devoted father, patient and gentle, spending hours playing with their son even after long days of ranch work. Life settled into a new rhythm. They continued to build their horse training business, which thrived under their combined expertise. Word spread throughout Texas about the couple who could work miracles with difficult horses, and people traveled from far away to seek their help. They hired a young man named Jimmy to help with the day-to-day ranch work, which gave them more time to focus on training and on their family. When Henry was 2 years old, Hannah discovered she was pregnant again. This time, the news felt less surprising, but no less joyful. Lucas was thrilled at the prospect of a second child, and Henry, too young to really understand, seemed to sense that something important was happening. Their daughter was born in the fall of 1884, arriving quickly and easily compared to Henry's difficult birth. She had Hannah's blonde hair and a fierce cry that made everyone laugh. They named her Rose, after Lucas's mother, who had passed away years earlier. Lucas held his daughter with such tenderness that Hannah felt her love for him deepen even further, something she had not thought possible. The ranch continued to prosper. By 1886, they owned 200 acres and had expanded their cattle herd significantly. Their horse training operation was booked months in advance, and they had earned enough respect in the region that they occasionally consulted with the Army on horse procurement. The work was demanding, but they had built something substantial, something that would last beyond their own lifetimes and provide for their children. Hannah sometimes thought back to that terrifying day when she had stood accused of horse theft, certain she was going to die. It seemed like a lifetime ago, like something that had happened to a different person. That frightened, desperate young woman had grown into a confident, capable rancher and mother, and all of it, all the good in her life now, had started with Lucas Shepard walking into that courtroom and refusing to let an injustice stand. One evening, after putting the children to bed, Hannah and Lucas sat on their porch, as they often did, watching the stars emerge in the darkening sky. Sage, now an older mare but still healthy and spirited, grazed peacefully in the nearby paddock with several other horses. "Do you ever think about that day?" Hannah asked. "The day we met?" Lucas smiled. "All the time. It was the day my life really started." "Mine too," Hannah said. She reached for his hand. "I still cannot believe you stayed. You could have ridden on to San Antonio, taken that job, lived a completely different life, but you stayed for me." "I stayed for us," Lucas corrected gently. "I knew even then that you were special, that we could have something real together. I was not about to walk away from that." "I am so grateful you did not," Hannah said. "I cannot imagine my life without you. You gave me everything, Lucas. A home, a family, a future I never thought I could have." "You gave me those things too," Lucas said. "Before I met you, I was just drifting, going from job to job without any real purpose. You gave me a reason to put down roots, to build something that matters. You gave me a family. You gave me love." They sat in comfortable silence for a while, hands clasped, watching the night deepen around them. Hannah thought about the journey that had brought them to this moment, all the challenges they had faced and overcome together. There had been droughts that threatened their cattle, illnesses that frightened them, moments of financial strain when they worried about making ends meet. But through everything, they had each other, and that had made all the difference. "Hannah," Lucas said after a while, "do you remember what I told you that first evening when we had dinner together? When you asked if I ever wanted to settle down? You said you had not found the right place yet, or the right reason to stop moving." "I found both that day," Lucas said. "The place is Valverde, this ranch, this land we have built our life on. But more than that, the reason is you. It was always you." Hannah felt tears prick at her eyes. Even after years of marriage, Lucas still had the power to move her with his words. I love you, she said simply. I love you so much. I love you too, Lucas replied. He pulled her close, and they sat together under the vast Texas sky, two people who had found each other against all odds and built a love that would last forever. The years continued to pass, marked by the steady rhythm of ranch life. Henry grew into a bright, curious boy who loved horses just as much as his parents did. By the time he was 6, he was already helping with basic training exercises, showing a natural gift for understanding animal behavior. Rose was more interested in the cattle, following Lucas around whenever he worked with the herd, asking endless questions about everything. They added on to the house as the family grew, building more bedrooms and expanding the kitchen. Hannah planted fruit trees and expanded her garden, finding satisfaction in growing food for her family. Lucas built a proper workshop where he could repair tack and tools, and slowly but surely, their ranch became not just a place of business, but a true home filled with life and laughter. In 1888, Hannah gave birth to their third child, another son they named Samuel. Unlike his siblings, Samuel was a quiet, thoughtful baby who seemed content to observe the world around him. Lucas joked that he would grow up to be a scholar, not a rancher, but he said it with pride and love. As their children grew, Hannah and Lucas made sure to tell them the story of how their parents had met, how a cowboy had stood up against injustice to help a woman falsely accused, and how that act of courage had changed both their lives forever. They wanted their children to understand the importance of doing what was right, even when it was difficult, even when standing up for justice might come with a cost. The children loved the story, especially the part about Sage recognizing Hannah when no one else believed her. The old mare had become something of a legend on the ranch, the horse whose loyalty had proven Hannah's innocence and started everything. Though she was too old now for heavy work, Sage lived a pampered retirement, and the children took turns caring for her, brushing her coat and bringing her treats. By 1890, the Shepard Ranch was one of the most successful operations in the region. They had earned enough to pay off their mortgage and purchase additional land. They employed several ranch hands now, and their horse training program had a waiting list that stretched for months. Lucas had trained some of the finest horses in Texas, and Hannah's gentle approach had saved several animals that others would have given up on. But despite their success, they never forgot where they came from. They donated money to help other families in need, remembering their own struggles. When a young widow came to town with nowhere to go, Hannah and Lucas gave her work on the ranch and a place to stay. When a neighboring rancher fell ill and could not afford medical care, they helped cover the costs without being asked. They believed in lifting others up, in creating a community where people took care of each other. One summer evening in 1891, the whole family gathered on the porch after dinner. Henry was 9 now, tall for his age, and already showing signs of the strong man he would become. Rose was 7, fearless and full of energy. Samuel was 3, shy but observant, always watching and learning. Hannah sat in her rocking chair with Lucas beside her, their hands clasped, watching their children play in the yard. I have been thinking, Lucas said quietly, about expanding the operation. Maybe bringing in someone to help manage things, so we can focus more on the training itself and spend more time with the children while they are still young. Hannah nodded thoughtfully. I like that idea. The children are growing up so fast. I do not want to miss any of it. We have built something good here, Lucas said. Something solid. But the best part is not the land or the business or the money. It is this, our family, our life together. I agree, Hannah said. I am so proud of what we have accomplished, but I am most proud of the life we have made, the family we are raising. These children will grow up knowing they are loved, knowing they can accomplish anything they set their minds to. That is our real legacy. Lucas squeezed her hand. We have come a long way from that day in the courtroom. We have, Hannah agreed. Sometimes I still cannot quite believe it all, that someone like you came into my life exactly when I needed you most. It feels like fate. Maybe it was, Lucas said. Or maybe it was just two people choosing to see the good in each other and deciding to build something together. Either way, I would not change a single moment of our journey. Hannah looked at her husband, this man who had saved her life and then given her so much more. This man who made her laugh and held her when she cried. This man who was her partner in every sense of the word. Neither would I, she said softly. As the sun set over their land, painting the sky in shades of orange and pink, Hannah felt a deep sense of contentment. She had everything she had ever wanted: a family, a home, meaningful work, and most importantly, love. True, lasting love with a man who saw her for who she really was and valued her accordingly. The children's laughter rang out in the warm evening air, and Sage whinnied from her paddock as if adding her own voice to the joy of the moment. Hannah smiled, thinking about how a horse had brought her and Lucas together, how Sage's loyalty had been the proof that changed everything. That mare had been her companion through the darkest times and had ultimately been the bridge to her future happiness. Life on the ranch continued its steady rhythm through the changing seasons. Fall brought the cattle roundup and the work of preparing for winter. Winter brought cozy evenings by the fire, with Hannah reading to the children while Lucas whittled wooden toys. Spring brought new life, calves and foals and baby chicks, and the children helped with all of it, learning responsibility and compassion. Summer brought long, hot days of hard work, but also swimming in the creek and picnics under the shade of the oak trees. In 1893, when Hannah turned 37, the family celebrated with a big party at the ranch. Friends and neighbors came from miles around, bringing food and gifts. There was music and dancing, and Henry played the fiddle he had been learning, his efforts earnest, if not yet expert. Rose sang, her clear voice carrying across the yard. Samuel helped serve food, his serious little face concentrating on not spilling anything. Lucas pulled Hannah aside during the party, leading her away from the crowd to a quiet spot near the barn. "I have something for you," he said, reaching into his pocket. He pulled out a small box, and when Hannah opened it, she found a delicate necklace with a small silver horse pendant. "Lucas, it is beautiful," she breathed. "Look at the back," he said. She turned the pendant over and found an engraving. "To Hannah, my heart, my home. Always, Lucas." Tears filled Hannah's eyes. "I will treasure this forever." Lucas fastened the necklace around her neck, his fingers gentle against her skin. "I wanted you to have something to remind you of where we started and how far we have come. That represents Sage, the horse that brought us together. But it also represents our love, Hannah. Strong and enduring and true." Hannah turned and kissed him, not caring that their guests might see. "I love you," she whispered against his lips. "Today and always." "Today and always," Lucas echoed. The years continued to unfold, each one bringing new challenges and new joys. Henry grew into a fine young man, taking on more responsibility at the ranch. He had his father's skill with horses and his mother's gentle heart. Rose became a skilled rider and roper, able to keep up with any of the ranch hands. She talked about wanting to have her own ranch someday, and neither Hannah nor Lucas doubted she would achieve that dream. Samuel showed a gift for numbers and began helping manage the ranch's accounts, his methodical mind perfect for keeping track of expenses and income. In 1898, Sage passed away peacefully in her sleep at the age of 24. The whole family mourned her, understanding that she had been more than just a horse. She had been the beginning of their story, the catalyst for everything that came after. They buried her on a hill overlooking the ranch, under a spreading oak tree, and Lucas carved a simple headstone that read, "Sage, beloved companion, proof of innocence, bringer of love." Hannah stood at the grave for a long time after the rest of the family had returned to the house, remembering the young mare she had raised from birth, remembering the bond they had shared. She thought about that terrible day when Sage's recognition had been the only thing standing between Hannah and a hangman's noose. She thought about how a horse's loyalty had brought Lucas into her life and changed everything. "Thank you, girl," Hannah whispered to the wind. "Thank you for everything." Lucas came to stand beside her, putting his arm around her shoulders. They stood together in silence, two people who had built a life together because a cowboy had believed in justice and a horse had recognized her owner. Life went on, as it always does. The ranch continued to thrive. Henry eventually married a sweet young woman named Catherine from a neighboring ranch, and they built a house on a parcel of land Lucas and Hannah gave them as a wedding gift. Rose met a cowboy named William who could match her energy and ambition, and they began planning their own ranch. Samuel surprised everyone by falling in love with teaching and moved to town to become the schoolmaster, though he still helped with the ranch accounts on weekends. In 1902, Hannah and Lucas became grandparents for the first time when Henry and Catherine had a baby girl. They named her Hannah after her grandmother, and when Lucas placed the infant in Hannah's arms, she felt her heart swell with love all over again. "Another generation," Lucas said, his voice full of wonder. "Our family continues." "It does," Hannah agreed, looking down at her tiny granddaughter. "And she will grow up hearing the story of how her grandparents met, how love and justice and loyalty brought us together." As Hannah rocked her granddaughter, she thought about the strange and wonderful path her life had taken, from a frightened young woman accused of theft to a wife, mother, successful rancher, and now grandmother. Every bit of it had been built on the foundation of that one moment when Lucas Shepard had walked into a courtroom and refused to let injustice prevail. She looked up at Lucas, who was watching her with those same warm, amber eyes that had first captured her attention so many years ago. He was older now, his hair touched with silver, lines around his eyes, from years of squinting in the sun. But he was still the same man who had saved her, who had believed in her, who had chosen to stay. "What are you thinking?" Lucas asked softly. "I am thinking about how lucky I am," Hannah said. "How blessed we have been." "The luck was all mine," Lucas replied. "The day I met you was the day my life truly began." They sat together on the porch of their home, the home they had built with their own hands and filled with love. Around them, the ranch buzzed with life and activity. In the distance, horses grazed peacefully in green pastures. The sound of children's laughter drifted on the breeze. Everything they had worked for, everything they had built, was thriving. As the sun set over the Texas landscape, painting the world in shades of gold and amber, Hannah felt a profound sense of peace. She had faced terrible odds and emerged victorious, not because she was perfect or strong or particularly brave, but because she had been willing to fight for what was hers, and because a good man had been willing to stand beside her. Their love story had begun with injustice and accusation, with a horse that recognized her owner and a cowboy who recognized the truth. But it had grown into something beautiful and enduring, something that would last beyond their own lifetimes, through their children and grandchildren, through the ranch they had built, through the community they had helped create. Hannah reached for Lucas's hand, and he took it without hesitation, their fingers intertwining in a gesture as familiar as breathing. They had held hands like this thousands of times over the years, in good times and bad, in celebration and sorrow. And they would continue to hold hands for all the years that remained to them. Partners in every sense, bound by a love that had started with a horse in a courtroom, but had blossomed into something neither of them could have imagined in those early days. "I love you," Hannah said, the words as true now as they had been the first time she spoke them. "I love you too," Lucas replied, "today and always." And as the stars began to emerge in the darkening sky above their Texas ranch, Hannah and Lucas Shepard sat together in the home they had built, surrounded by the family they had raised, living the life they had created together. It was a good life, a rich life, a life worth fighting for, and it had all started with a cowboy who proved a horse had been hers all along, and in doing so, won her heart forever.